2 in Olpilo and 1 in Baljumajega sites. I also did some archival research, which were archaeological archival research, especially dealing with materials and all documents which were generated from previous archaeological research. And for this one, I accessed the UDism repository, especially with the material that were collected and they were studied with the UDism field school, which were conducted in the region in 2020 and 2021. I also collected some environmental proxies to understand the pattern of change of the environment, where 16 soil samples were from Baljumajega and Opiro were collected. I also collected 99 live plant samples to make a correlation and to get to understand the pattern of change, or whether the environment was different by then when the megalith were constructed, and how was it different with the contemporary environment. With dating, I collected 16 samples from different kind of materials, including charcoal, shells, tuyas, pottery, and for these ones, only 14 samples were successfully dated after being submitted to special facility that this work. In terms of data analysis, this work took like 3 stages of doing the analysis. The first stage was done in the field, where it involved cleaning, sorting, recording artifacts, and the photographing by using Leica station and the vernier caliper, like this one, for measuring some materials to get their clear measurement and etc. And in the field also we did some soil description as we are doing the stratigraph to understand the stratigraph. So we described it by using a Mansell color chart, which is special for understanding the color of the soil. The second stage was for artifact analysis. I applied schemes for regional scholars for pottery analysis, lithics, fauna, metals, and the beads. And after the analysis, all data were coded in Excel and the SPSS. For lab analysis, the microbotan analysis was done at Mbarara, University of Science and Technology, and for the dating samples were taken to Poznan lab in Poland. For the findings, this was my first objective, and in this objective, I explored forms, materials, types, locations, landscape, settings, function, and the communities associated with the erection of megalith in the basin. In terms of the location, after my findings, I realized that most of the structures were, like these settlements, were set near the rivers and the escarpments, and these people constructed several structures. We had domains like these ones, which looks like burial tombs. We have stone cycles, these kind of structures, and we have burial cairns, each reflecting some cultural significance, like while others served as residential houses. For the material source, this study discovered that most of the stones which were used were local quarried. Like these people would select an area where they would get easily the materials to do their construction. And as you can see, this outcrop of granite rocks, which makes like 80% of its megalith structure, and this outcrop of basalt rock from Baljumajega site, which were also stones used to do the construction. In case of cultural context, actually this one was to connect, like to show the affiliates, the groups, the ethnic groups, which can probably be the builders of the structures. And through contextual analysis, personal observation, and some historical interviews, like ethno-historical interviews, like we used a sample of two groups who are the Toga and the Hadza. Like, why did I use the Datoga? Because these two groups are the ones who consider the region to be their homeland, like to be their indigenous place. So the first assumption was for them that they might have be the one who constructed, but after looking, like observing the way they construct, for instance, these Hadza who are still hunter foragers, for them they don't set permanent settlement. They just construct things like this one, and when it is rainy season, they just live in caves. So this one actually, like considering this one, they were automatically put off because studies show that they have been like that in 50 years before. So they haven't changed regardless of how the government has done initiatives to make sure that they start even domesticating. For the Datoga, this is how they construct. And during some interviews with them, even showing some structures, like these stone structures, they looked, it's like they are not connected somehow with these structures. And therefore, this study established in this objective that these structures were built by a group of people who predates the existence of this one, or they lived contemporaneously with this group, but later this group may be moved and they might be of ancient time, as we are going to see for the next objectives. So in this, the second objective, as I said, it was majorly to characterize the archaeological assemblage associated with megalithic structures. And the assemblage, after collecting more of its data, it included lithics, which are stone tools, pottery, fauna materials, which are bones, beads, as well as ironworking materials, which are slugs, tuyas, and metal implements. And these megalith sites, like after analyzing all these materials, it revealed that the megalith sites show Neolithic and late iron occupations with a gap in between, as I will be explaining. Like Neolithic, at this sense, means like the origin of food domestication, which includes like plant domestication and animal domestication, which is food domestication. And like in this assemblage, also I had decorative bits which reflected that these people also had some symbolic culture. But also there was also evidence of metalworking and a domesticated animal, which points to skilled livestock-based economies. To start with the first assemblage, which was lithic, which are stone tools, I collected several lithics. These are microlith, and these microliths are for late Stone Age culture, and these are grinding stones which were used for crushing some substance. And these are stone mortars. So these kind of tools were used to grind some substance in equipments of this nature. But also I had some stone polished axe which are of this nature. I also collected some stone bowls, and you can see even this disc, maybe they were used for covering because their dimension looked like actually the same with the bowls. But also these people would also work on the stones to create things for some cultural initiation. As you can see here, it resembles, and there are some of them, like we collected like 3 of them, which they were may be used for some initiation for male circumcision. And generally, this assemblage, the Lisky assemblage, was dominated by LSA, like which is late Stone Age culture and the Neolithic culture, because they are like regarding a conventional knowledge of some artifacts. Like there were tools that were majorly like invented during Neolithic time and others who that emerged from around the late Stone Age time. Coming to pottery, I also collected 796 pottery, and by using forms of this pottery and the decoration motifs, I realized that these sites were settled by Neolithic people, like people who introduced domestication of plants and animals in the area. But later, because of for the lack of Iron Age working pottery, I realized that the site was abandoned at some point, and it was later occupied by the late Iron Age people, because in this pottery assemblage, I couldn't find the pottery which signifies the early ironworking occupation. I also recovered some metal working materials, including slugs, tuyeres, fragments, and after analyzing the materials, especially the slugs and the tuyeres, I suggested that the site might have been a blacksmithing site and not like a primary iron work, like iron smelting sites, because for the nature of the slugs that I recovered in the 2 years, and for this one, like these metal implements were only found from Orupiro sites only, and actually I'm suggesting and I'm proposing that Orupiro may have supplied the tools to nearby megalithic sites like Engaruka, where no slugs or tuyeres were found. Even at Baljomajega, the site I've worked on, I couldn't find some slugs. So Orupiro might have been providers of metals. As I've said, beads were also found, and they were made of ostrich egg shells and Achatina land snail shells, and they were possibly used for decorations, and they would be used for social status. As you can see, there are some beads of this nature, but also they would make some necklace of this kind. In terms of fauna, I recovered 4,000 fauna materials, where 46.7 were identifiable. And actually bones in archaeological records are useful in telling several things, including diet of the people and the domestication and hunting approach of those people. And after analyzing, I realized that the assemblage was dominated by small to medium-sized animals like goats, sheep, and some few dicks and some few wild animals. And also, I realized because of this evidence, you can see these are head of long bones, which are being detached from their long bones. So this archaeologically and paleontologically tells that the consumed animals were mostly young. So these people would select young animals as preference for their food. So I also noted some burning mark and the cut mark, which suggests butchery, different kind of cooking, and the use of tools. For instance, the stone tools and some metal tools in preparing their meal. So the assemblage indicates animal husbandry and opportunistic hunting, because 80% of the bones, after I had taken my samples for the experts to do the species, like to identify species, were from goats, sheep, and some few cows, but also some few wild animals. So these people supplement their major subsistence strategy with the rare hunting. For the chronology, which was the third objectives, I used two techniques of dating. Number one was relative dating, which was majorly doing the comparison of some artifacts with well-known dates, which have been reported by various scholars, but also I did radiocarbon dating. For the relative dating, after I had compared the lithic technology or the lithics that I collected, nature of pottery, and some megalith structure, especially the domains, they informed that this site might have originated during the Neolithic time, and then later the late Iron Age people occupied the sites. And for the radiocarbon dating, as I've told you, I collected 16 samples. And when we are sent to Poznan lab, only 14 samples were were dated, as you can see the table. And for 2 which lacked carbon were not dated. And actually, the radiocarbon dating informed that this site might have been settled from around this time, 2,500 years before present, up to 14th century AD. As you can see this table, the dates which are in red, these are for Neolithic, and I actually did direct dating of Portshed, which brought, like the first sample brought to 2,520 before present, and another pottery gave a date of 2030, which is Neolithic time. And for the samples which are in purple, these are for late Iron Age time, and actually for it started around 700 AD, where I dated a tuya. A tuya is like it's a pipe which was used to pump in the air into a furnace when they were doing some smelting and some smithing. So I dated that one to know exactly the timing for the what, when a metal technology was brought in the site, and it brought 700 AD, which is long time. So the findings show a gap after PN period and the reoccupation by late Iron Age communities between 700 up to 14th century AD. As you can see, these were my stratigraphy, and the places, like the location where I picked my samples. These were samples from Unit 8, and this was samples from Unit 1. But what was intriguing, it's that this site might have been subjected into some constant disturbance, because it is impossible archaeologically to find like the deeper or the bottom layer having some very younger age than the ones in the top. So you can see I picked a sample of pottery here, which gave the date of 2,000 years before present, but while the sample from such deeper, which is 100 centimeter deep, gave like a date of 125 before present. So this one gives a conception of maybe the site had been subjected into constant disturbance, and that's why my point of either the site had been settled and then resettled later, and those people who resettled later might have done some construction or adding some structures in this site, and they are maybe agent of this disturbance. The same applies to unit unit 1. You can see there are some samples which are older than some samples at the bottom. The last objective was for environmental, like to analyze the environment condition in the Eyasi Basin, like to analyze the environment that characterized the construction. And in this, I collected 49 modern plants and 16 soil samples from excavated trench. And the key issue was to identify the key phytoliths. Phytoliths are micro silica inorganic material that forms between and in the plants, and when the plant dies, it falls and deposits and conserve themselves in the soil. So once retrieved, they can tell about the ancient vegetation and how the vegetation looked like. So like after collecting these samples, there was a strong similarities between modern and the fossil phytoliths, which suggest past vegetation was similar to the current one. So, and even after consulting some sources for the people who have done a similar environmental study, for them they established that there was no change in 5,000 years ago, the native environment of previous 5,000 years ago with the present. And for this case, I'm suggesting that the findings reveal human and the environmental interaction and a hint at other factors behind cultural change. So it is stressed that because if there's no change, then this construction might have not made by maybe changing environment, but people chose what to construct regarding their demands of the time. In conclusion, these sites, the megalith sites in Lake Eyasi Basin, were built for access to resources. As I've said, most of them were built where near the river, but also for safety, because some of the structures were built, like the settlement were set at the foothills of the escarpment, where they would visibly see the enemies and etc. And where there is local stone for use. So most of them focused on where they could get resources, safety, and the materials for construction. And maybe others had symbolic meanings linked to life and death, especially the domains where I excavated one and I couldn't get some human remains. So it means it was used for some other ritual issues. But also, builders were likely early pastoralist or farming groups predating the Hadzabe and the Toga of contemporary time. But also, the radiocarbon dates show a long-term occupation from Neolithic to late Iron Age time, despite a gap in early Iron Age and some stratigraphy inconsistencies. But through absolute dating, this is what it tells us. By using phytolith data, it shows a stable grassland to woodland environment, suggesting construction was socially and not environmentally driven. So there are some other social reasons apart from environment that influenced people to do the construction or to do this, to undergo such kind of innovation. And for this study, I recommend the following. There should be more studies to do, to do some more radiocarbon dating, especially to get like the link, like the missing gap of the tradition that I didn't recover. But also, there should be the use of LIDAR and GIS mapping, because an area is still bushy where some other structures were not seen. So these are advanced technology equipment that can even detect the structure which is underneath the surface. But also, there should also be a study to link the builders via DNA and ethnography. So there should be a study to do with the ancient DNA to at least to cross-check, to check whether we if we can, they can be able to get some human remains to check the DNA shift and the DNA comparison of the people who built. And this one can be extensive, can even go beyond this region to check for this one. But also, I recommend support from conservation and the tourism bodies. Like they should take some measures to make sure that they conserve this one for the future consumption, and even for the current consumption. In this study, I was able to craft 3 papers during this journey, and they are still under review for publication. I've received comments from 1 paper, and I'm now working through those comments, and it's my hope that they will soon be published. I would like to thank my supervisors, the funder, who was Geda Henkel and Achus, the project coordinators for their pushing, the doctoral committee, my employer, University of Dodoma, because they employed me as soon, and they gave me a study leave. They employed and I never worked, so they were paying me salary which I've not worked for. And I would also thank my family, my parents for their inspirational guidance, my wife and my kids who have been playing for this one. And thank you for listening.
I think Albert needs a big hand clap. Thank you very much, Albert. Maybe you can sit a little bit as we wait for the critical reader to come. So Dr. Andema, you are welcome to engage Albert.
For the interest of time, I observed a protocol. I wish to thank Albert for reaching this far with this work. This work of archaeology, which always incorporates paleoenvironment, is a very hectic and bulky work, but I'm happy that you managed to navigate through all this, from history, archaeology, botany, paleoecology, paleoenvironment, and so on. So I'm going to interact with you on a few areas in your work. When I read your work, maybe to begin with, out of curiosity, in terms of the size, when does a material qualify to be a megalith?
Okay, thank you for the good question. There is no clear dimension for the structures to be megalith, but majorly the construction by using bigger stones, which you can by yourself see that this couldn't be easy for one or two people, like two people to carry the stone and bring it to site. That now that one qualifies into this description of a structure to be a megalith.
Precise response. There isn't a specific cutoff for megalith. That's correct. If we go through the preliminaries of your thesis that I read, I realized some challenge issues with the list of tables, list of figures, list of plates. I've actually highlighted them. You will address them once I give you this. Now, in the abstract, you provided a succinct abstract focusing on background, problem, objective, summary of methodology, findings, and conclusions. Though I have a bit of challenge with you when you report your ages as a PB. Your carbon dating places these sites in the Neolithic and late Iron Age from 2500 PB. It's good practice to put YR there, year before present. Though in some PB applies, but it makes reading a bit hard. It's important to put there year before present, YR PB. Now, when you attribute these materials to the Neolithic stage, it remains verbose, it remains broad, because this Neolithic stage varies globally. The timing of the Neolithic stage varies globally. For your case here, I think pastoral Neolithic is what situates your chronology. That's around 5,000 to 1,200 PB, year PB. So including pastoral Neolithic would give it some specificity. Now, you also proposed that vitalist data suggested the environmental conditions 2,500 years ago were similar to today's. What do you mean, today's? What are the conditions today? Another reader may not know, or readers in some years to come who will come through your work. So you specify these today's conditions. Are they dry or wet? Be specific. I have seen you have brought the relevance of this work for conservation in your recommendation. I did not see that clearly in the work. In your presentation, I have seen it. I hope you will include it. These are just comments yet.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in the scope of the study, when you also throughout the work, I want to advise you limit possessive statements. I, he, my, we. Use the study, the research, or the researchers, and so on. Be silent in it. Now, in the scope of the study, other than your motivation that you gave us here, that you did this work at master's level, you are associated with the excavations there, the justification for Lake Eyasi Basin as the geographical scope, to me, did not come out well. Do you want to tell us why you chose the Lake Eyasi Basin in terms of existence of these megaliths?
Okay, thank you. As I've said, and it's somewhere reflected in my thesis. I chose the Lake Eyasi Basin. First of all, that's what I said from my motivational point of view. But secondly, this region has been famous and rich in terms of archaeological records, and there are some several archaeological studies or research which has been taking place in the region since 1930s, and they have actually, it has documented the past human or ancient human culture from around Middle Stone Age time and constantly up to the historic times or contemporary times. So because of that rich archaeological data, and having that those ancient researcher had also reported the existence of these structures, but it is for this case the megalith culture which had never been deeply studied, and that's why I took this focus of now dealing or understanding more about this culture, at least to have a complete set of ancient like past people's culture in the basin.
Okay, you needed to have summarized this in the scope of the study in page 6, though you also brought it clearly in page 20 in your presentation of the location of the study area. Now, if we go to the chapter 2, physiographical profile of the study area from page 18, I really admit a detailed physiographical profile of the study area were presented. You highlighted the topography, geology, climate, vegetation, and so on of the Lake Eyasi Basin. What I saw as a gap there is how these physiographical factors are linked. How are they linked to the megalith sculpture in Lake Eyasi? What is the relationship between each of these factors and the megalith sculpture?
Okay, thank you. Because now the topograph talks about the physical appearance of the region, the geological setup of the region. Now, in talking of like how is it connected? How can it be connected with the construction of megalith? Because in the construction of megalith, there are several things that you need to talk about. First of all, the location where these structures were constructed. And actually that one, talking about that one only, you need to touch on the topography, like talking of the physical things which are happening. And that's why I had some those kind of justification that these ones are at the gentle slope of the escarpment or mountain or near the lakes, near the river, this side of the lake, and etc. But also, even talking of the construction material also depended, like I also wanted, there was a need me to talk about the geology of the area, at least to say which kind of rock which is outcropping in the region. And actually, it can be measured the reason why these people selected those regions, because there was plenty of construction. So for me, I think talking of the topography has a very close link with the discussing the deep interpretation of megalith culture in the region.
Yeah, that is true. My concern is just you reflecting this, what you have just said, under each of these physiographical profiles.
Okay.
Yeah, you capturing that. There should be a linkage
Okay.
to the megalith culture. How do you differentiate megalithics for religious, ceremonial, burial, and astronomical observation purposes?
Okay. Because, as I've said, I used a mixed approach, and for this part, I majorly used the phenomenological research design, especially to do with the contextual analysis of what I saw in the field. And actually, this one brings you closer to examining these structures and what you get around it, and you can draw the meaning. For instance, for the dolmen, I realized that they were astronomical, or they were used maybe through this sun and maybe moon rituals, because I recovered, like I documented like 6 of them. But the orientation of the doors were different trees. Like some other domains, they were direct to like the door were directly to the west, where it's a sunset position. But others, the doors were in the true east, where it's a sunrise position. So that's why I came into the knowledge. Maybe they might have been used for some rituals, or for some what, like these religious rituals during the evening weather, or during the morning. So some kind of that interpretation. But others, because there are some structures with the room partitions, you could easily say this was a house, and the others were, for instance, the burial cairns. I excavated some. I thought maybe they are graves, but after excavating like 3 of them, I couldn't find some human remains. And searching from different scholars, especially even the nearby site, which is Ngaruka, I realized that some were not even used for burials. However, some were used for burials. But for me, I was not able to get the human remains. So I give a suggestion, maybe they were used for some other activities, or if they were used for burials, the bones might have been consumed by alkaline nature of the soil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On page 48, you established in table 3.1 the chronology of the Ngaruka cultural complex. And I have seen different authors here giving varied chronologies of this Ngaruka complex. The Setsonen 2005 and 2012 date sits between 3,500 to 2,000 years BP, and then other authors give it a date of 4th to 18th century CE. You never specified the dating materials that these authors used, and also the techniques. So between 3,500 to 2,000 years before present and 4th to 18th century CE, which is a more credible date for this Engarunga complex, according to you?
Okay, that's why when I was reading, and when I came across a study by Sutton who connected the site of Engaruka with the one I studied in Eyasi Basin, I was somehow shocked because for him, he related these sites by merely looking at some structures which look the same. But also, my point was, Engaruka itself still has some chronological issues because they are still debating. Because you can see the previous scholars like who studied Engaruka, they were presuming, like they presumed that the site might have been settled during the late Iron time, like from 12th century up to towards the 16th century. But now here, and these people were dating charcoal, which is good sample if you find it in a proper context. But if there was a disturbance, the modern charcoal, you can find a modern charcoal in the deeper deposit of the soil, and then it contradicts with you. But for Sonnen, it was interesting because for him, he used the pottery, which gives actually an accurate timeline of a particular culture. However, his conclusion was generally saying maybe Engaruka was also settled by or occupied by Neolithic people, but he never gave an accurate answer to tell that Engaruka was built during Neolithic. But in my study, and actually for Sutton, he connected the site of Engaruka with those structures in like Eyasi because he also collected some pottery that looked that one of Engaruka tradition. But for me, I picked a sample for Engaruka tradition, which were collected from my sites, and it brought a date of Neolithic time. That's why, even in my conclusion, it was somehow bold that these people settled and constructed the megalith during the Neolithic time. And for this reason, I'm also cementing, like consolidating the point which was made by Sonnen that Engaruka, instead of that, maybe people settled even before they constructed, but these structures might have been constructed by Neolithic people, because the result he got from dating, it's similar with what I got from this region where my study was carried out.
What dating technique did he use? Just capture
like I used radiocarbon dating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you need to also reflect for Sonnen.
Okay.
To exactly match with your obtained dates. Now, in chapter 4 of the research methodology, on page 58, you reported yourself here that in archaeological study, the qualitative methods focus on gathering and interpreting non-numerical data, often through subjective interpretation. I pick you from that statement, subjective interpretation. How did you validate this subjective interpretation of your qualitative data? Were they subjective?
Okay, regarding some philosophical assumptions in research, especially when you're doing critical realism or interpretivism, for this research orientation, reality is multiple, and the reality is subjective. So that's why I said the interpretation of some structures would be analyzed according to how the context I saw myself, and that one can mean different from another person who can be interested to start the same structure. So that's why I said under that kind of interpretation, that's why I'm saying like there were some subjective interpretation in some of my data, and actually this is open to some other guy who would wish to establish another truth.
Okay. Yeah, I also saw you used phenomenology later to get rid of these subjective interpretations. It's there in your write-up.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what you worked on, these materials, some of them were used by University of Dar es Salaam team in 2020, 2021. My concern is, did your study fit within the scope of these earlier works by this team from Dar es Salaam University? How did you end up using this in your PhD work?
Okay, thank you for the question. Why did I use the materials which were excavated by this team from UDism? It's because it was a field school. And actually it was a field school for students training. And actually this work was done on the site that I was carrying out my study. I later carried out my study from there. And these materials were still at the University of Dar es Salaam and they were never analyzed. So I took that opportunity because essentially I was also part, before I became a PhD student, I was also part for training those students in the basin. So apart from zeroing in my material that I excavated and collected myself, I also supplemented those materials to get a bigger picture. Thank you.
Was it a scale up of your master's work to PhD?
No, my master's work was not for I by the way, my master's work dealt with conservation and management of the sites only. It was Mumba Rock Shelter, which is also another archaeological site located in Eyasi Basin. Yeah.
Good. Now the archaeological excavations in page 66, you stated there that was proceeded. Archaeological excavation was proceeded by archaeological surveys. Which comes first?
Surveys. It is survey that dictates you where to dig, because you dig where you see the element of what you are interested. So you don't dig before survey. So through survey, you locate places where you're supposed to dig.
Therefore, were these surveys, did the surveys proceed the excavations or the other way around?
Pardon?
Did the surveys proceed the excavations or the other way around? Anyway, it's a matter of language. You could have used preceded.
Oh, it is precede. Okay, I say proceed. Okay,
proceed. It should be preceding.
I did. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a slip of hand.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, the issues of the previous excavations in these sites by the earlier researchers, and vis-a-vis your current study, much as you said, you try to strictly use the GPS to avoid areas where they excavated. There are others who may not have used GPS. Could this have not affected your samples? Because I see some of the radiocarbon dates, they are reversed and so on. What do you say about this? Your excavations vis-a-vis the past excavations in that basin.
Okay, thank you. That's why we do carry out survey and intensive survey to the region before you choose where to excavate. And actually the reason is to essentially get where they have never excavated, such that you don't get things mixed. And actually that one was put on board, like it was considered much better to make sure that I don't excavate where people like previous people had excavated. But there is something that was special for like, which was intriguing even for this one, because I noted like some of the structure even were excavated. But now the challenge was, these people reached the site, especially the whites, and they might have recorded some things, but they have never they have never published the materials from the sites. But when I was trying to check on the internet and some repository, especially in the British Institute of East Africa, I saw some photos from these sites, but there was no paper being published, and maybe even some notes which talks about the sites. And that's why I was saying at least maybe they got something that had never been reported. And actually this study, that's why I'm taking this study as a foundational study in understanding deeper about this culture.
Yeah, I'm taking you on this because of the irregularities in some of your radiocarbon dates. When we reach that section, you really realize that some of the surface samples dating older than the middle and the lower layers.
Yeah.
What do you attribute this to?
And actually that's why, because you know, when I was analyzing especially the pottery material, as I said, I couldn't get the early iron age pottery, but I was able to find the Neolithic pottery and late iron age pottery. And remember, in terms of timing, like timeline, we start with the Neolithic, and then we come like we come for early iron age, and then later late iron age. And that's what I'm saying. Because of this lack of evidence, like the evidence for early iron working pottery, so I'm saying maybe this site, it was constructed and sorted by Neolithic people, and later it was abandoned to be reoccupied later by late iron age people who had like iron working technology. And maybe during the reoccupation time, they might have disturbed the site through establishing their new settlement on the site. And that's why I get these date inconsistencies through the profiles. And through this one, that's what I'm thinking, like the future researchers should also consider that one, at least to explore like in broad some areas where they can get a right sequence of the dating, of the dating sequence. I don't think
so. Perhaps there was reworking. We call that one reworking in paleo environment.
Okay.
Maybe the surface, the young surface is overturned. It goes, sinks down, and the bottom older one comes on top. That's called reworking.
Okay.
Okay. Most of what really not captured here, you have already highlighted them. Now, in the archaeological assemblage, they studied megalithic sites. This Olpiro, Oldogom, reveal evidence of occupation during the Neolithic and late Iron Age periods, as indicated by the distinct pottery assemblages. You also obtained a hand axe from Olpiro site, as you reflected on page 144. That is an Acheulean industry between 1,500, 1,500,000 to 300,000 years ago. Much as for you, you have restricted your megalith sites to only the Neolithic and late Iron Age. What about this Acheulean industry, where you obtained a hand axe?
Yeah, as I've said, the region has been occupied by human from around 300,000 years ago, like which was a time of during the Middle Stone Age time. So getting a hand axe which dates that time, like 300,000 years ago, within the premises of megalithic sites, cannot be really connected with the use of the sites, but because now those people, the ancient people who first inhabited the region, might have been moving around doing their hunting, and actually this place might have been an area where they could be they could do their hunting from, and maybe they dropped that thing and I was able to get it. But it's also possible that the people tend to reuse some of the tools if it is still in a good shape, because you can see this hand axe actually like it is beautiful to some of their polished stone axe. So maybe it was reused by these people later to be used for doing some complex cutting activities.
Okay.
But technologically speaking, this was supposed to be subjected in early Stone Age assemblage, or the transition of the early Stone Age, early Stone Age to the middle Stone Age. So the transition time around there.
Maybe the abundance of this hand axe, were they really abundant or just a one-off?
Pardon, I don't
The
get.
abundance of this
I only got one.
one only.
Yes.
Yes, that explains it.
Yes.
Yeah. So you did say also that perhaps there was abandonment of this site during the early Iron Age.
Yes.
You have done, you did the paleo environment reconstruction. Was there any signature in your paleo environment proxy which could have pointed to this reason why they abandoned this?
Yeah, so that's a challenge because of some stratigraphic inconsistencies. Even these paleoenvironmental signatures were like was not so much easy to establish that one, but when dealing with the complete assemblage of my paleoenvironmental samples, I realized that there are some phytolith signature that shows like the environment, like the transitional time from wetland to arid kind of the environment, and generally that's why I came up to the conclusion that the environment from the past, almost 2,000 years ago, was similar to the current environment, which is arid environment, and therefore, because now that's why I'm suggesting that there should be another paleoenvironmental study, especially to do that with the core drilling near the lake, to understand fully why the early ironworking people abandoned the site and why these people, or the ironworking people, came later when it had reached the late ironworking time. So that one is a pending things to come, and which I could not establish with this study.
Yeah, thank you. Having been aware that to best to study this paleoenvironment, you needed a very suitable archive, like a lake sediments, swamp areas, and your study being near Lake Eyasi. Have you just known that the surface soils will not give you good chronology of phytoliths, and then you are proposing lake sediments? Why did you not do quarrying from Lake Eyasi?
Yeah, now that one was determined by the amount of research money that I had, because now deploying those core drilling machines or equipments inside is very expensive, and they would need a very extensive and mega funding, and that's why I'm taking it for future research endeavor.
Yeah, because also failure to also fit the chronology besides the phytoliths really makes that stratigraphy not meaningful so much.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's like you've observed.
It is true.
Mm.
Mm.
So, Mr. Albert, with this, I've come to the end of my interaction with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andama. We can't thank you enough. Dr. Andama lost his laptop after he had prepared for this defense, and he had to start reading over again. We really don't take that for granted. Please join me to put our hands together for our opponent. And Albert, how do you feel? You feel good? Okay. So I'm going to invite, I'm looking around just to see who goes first. So, so when you see me looking around, it's not because I am not, I'm not decided, but okay. So I'll invite Dr. Taylor to go first. And after that, we'll have Dr. Suruku, and then Dr. Chamanywa, and Dr. Katuram. So maybe if you just take, I hope you have a note, pen and paper. If you just take note of the questions from the panelists, because it's so that it's not as though we're having another engagement with a critical reader. You take note of the questions and then you'll respond. Thank you. Yeah, because of the online.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Albert, for this very interesting study, and the discussion with the opponent has been really helpful as well. I'm not an archaeologist, so I have 4 questions, but some will be straightforward, some may be bigger. 3 are related to the study. 1 is just maybe to think about more broadly. First question is a disciplinary question about how archaeologists think about change, how you're explaining the change that you're finding the physical evidence for, and you refer to groups. So Neolithic groups and so on. How do you know that these are different people? There's an assumption here that migration is the cause of change, that it's new people introducing new technologies. How do we know that there's not innovation or other changes happening internally? I think part of that is answered by, you notice that there's a gap of, I think, about 700 years. I think a general question about how you're explaining the data as an archaeologist, and if there are different possibilities about what accounts for changes in technology. Second, or I should say that also has to do with the connections to present day groups, the Datoga and Hadzabe people, and this relates to my second question, is what historical linguists have written about this area, whether there are linguists who've used glottochronology to try to see connections between present day languages and changes in the deep past. I don't know the literature on historical linguistics that well for this region. My third question is about sort of another question about what other scholars have done. You mentioned that there is not much published on this by other scholars, except that maybe they had done research, but they just kept it locked away. Why is that? Why has this not been studied, this area before? My understanding is that it's a very unique region. I was looking over, I think Bethwell got this book from the 70s, was it, or that collection, Zamani collection, and there was something in there saying that this the area around Lake Eyasi was the only unique in the region for having agriculturalists and pastoralists together until about 500 AD. So what accounts for the gap in the literature? And then my fourth question is not really a fair question because it's not really about the content of the thesis, but it's maybe a provocation to sort of to think with about the archaeological study of human innovation. Today, a lot of scholars talk about the Anthropocene, that humans have become so powerful that there's no distinction between environment and humans. Everything in the environment is human-made. What is it that those scholars can learn from studying the African past and innovation in making large-scale megaliths? Is there anything that scholars who are interested in more recent times can learn from the methods that you're using in archaeology? So thank you again for the very interesting discussion. Yeah.
Albert, my background is in development studies. We don't excavate, but we observe issues and we critically think around it. So I'm not going to ask questions around excavation. I'm not very much going into whether there were no human bones, and yet you were able to find young Dick bones that survived, but the humans cannot survive. I'm not going to those details. I could see during your presentation and also your dialogue with the opponent, you were really very confident and you understand your issues very well. And you also kept mentioning, I have been employed here. I have done studies in this area. Even the samples in University of Dar es Salaam, I took it there and I use it for teaching people. Yeah. And I could see that from your body demeanor, even the way you look at me. So my main question is around positionality. What is your positionality as far as this study is concerned? Did you now identify it and you said, now there is a PhD in this area, I am very competent in this, and this is my area and I will jump and get it, and you actually got it? Karatu district is always referred to as the Garden of Eden because it is looked at as a virgin, especially when people talk about Mburumburu, that when you go to Mburumburu, it is as it has been created and nothing has touched it, even Karatu itself. And even when you go to Eyasi, Eyasi has been invaded because of tourism. And also the only group of people there are not the Tonga and Hadza. But we also see the Ira and the Sukuma and the Maasai have migrated there. What that means is there is incorporation around the group of people, and also cattle herding has taken place and it continues to take place. when you were looking at your last objective and you identified what you call the 49 modern plants, and you concluded that the vegetation now is similar to the one in the past. You mean the cows were not doing good business, eating the environment, and the humans are not moving around there to be able to make such a conclusion? I don't know, perhaps let us learn more about that conclusion of yours. And I love the fact that you were able to clearly tell us the two theories that you used: environmental possibilism and refugium theory. At the beginning, you defined it so well. I thought when you were presenting the results, we'll be able to see how you have used and integrated these theories into the entire results as you presented them. The Tanzanian people love spices, and they put a lot of it in their soup. But if you land on spices, which is not integrated properly in the soup, but you have eaten it, the taste may not be good. What are the two theories doing as you presented them, but not very much seen in your presentation of the results as per the objectives? Perhaps I would like to hear your comment about that. The Sukuma people and the Iraq are known to be invasive and a little bit aggressive as they move with their cattle. They are considered to be destructive, even much more than the cattle themselves. Now, the main question that I want to ask is, you look at the Hadzabe and also the Toga. You, in your study, claim that these are the indigenous groups of people, and they have remained in that area. And of recent, we have also seen it is as if the communities have just discovered them. They are all over. People talk about them. How indigenous are they? Is it just because people have not come to contact with them, and that is the reason why you call them indigenous? What do you mean that they're indigenous people? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for very good questions. And to start with Dr. Edgar, you asked, the first question you asked about how archaeologists think of changes and technology and how do they differentiate that one. And actually, maybe to talk first. Okay, how do they think of the changes and the human agency in making the changes? Yeah, because there is what we call in archaeology, it's an approach we call a landscape archaeology. Like before you analyze the material, then you first need to do some analysis of the landscape to see how people would utilize the landscape towards their cultural endeavor. And by the way, for us as archaeologists, apart from studying the material and the technology, how it changes, we do reflect that one towards the landscape to see how these people perceived their world around them and how they utilized the existence of some natural resources towards their running their social and cultural and cultural life. That's and it's an approach called landscape archaeology before we do some other things. Yes, and you had also asked about whether there are some linguists who have written about the area. I have read like 2 books, but one which is more extensive. It was written by someone called Maloe in 2010. I have a copy of that book, and actually for him, he wrote extensively about the Hadza. However, he also points some he critically touches issues to do with some other ethnic groups in the region. So it's called it's titled, I think I've even cited in my dissertation. So it talks a lot about the life of Hadza, their origin, and how they started interacting with some other ethnic groups in the region, and the group of the people who are closely living in harmony, especially the Datoga, and that's why they call themselves people of the bush. When you reach there and you start interviewing that, like the Hadza calls the Datoga like we are all people of the bush, because they have been interacting in the region peacefully when these are doing some blacksmithing things and pastoralism, and these are doing their hunting and gathering and harmonious with the environment to make sure that each of the group is getting their meal sufficient. Why previous study skipped publishing some of the things? That's what we asked. Maybe more scholarly, I would say this one maybe was off their research scope. They were maybe focusing on some other things, because, as I've said, the Basin has been majorly famous for archaeological and anthropological studies. So they were interested in some maybe in some these ancient culture, more ancient culture, especially the Iron Age culture, but again, you should not forget that archaeology was brought in Africa as a colonial package. And it was brought sometimes to cement what they had said about Africa. So when they come across some magnificent technology which contradicts to their thinking, there are some tendency of skipping. And it may be keeping quiet if they would present material that contradicts what they had said, to let some other future people maybe to talk about it, or they would say it in a nutshell, like in a very superficial way. I remember even my supervisor is here. She can be able to say, when I submitted one of the paper, there is one of the reviewer who said, these are not domain. I don't care what Piccolo told you, because I cited that before calling this domain, I consulted someone called Piccolo, who is a leading scholar of domains in Europe. And he really told me these are real domains. But the reviewer saying these are not domains, I don't care what Piccolo told you. So you can imagine. Yeah. And actually that's because, in East Africa, they are reported, there are no place which are like these domains are reported, but we have some of them in some parts of North Africa, the Horn of Africa, when you go through the Somaliland and the part of Ethiopia. So they are firstly reported from this site, and then I think because they normally connect with the Asian origin, so it contradicted their thinking, and that's what I think. But also you talked about the use of the site for current planning. I think something like that. I didn't get it well. But I think among the recommendations I made, it was like this site was like this study was significantly. Okay, maybe you can repeat the question and I get it clear.
Sorry, I'll try. It was more about your theory of environmental possibilism, and today people argue we're in the Anthropocene, so we can't really say the environment provides possibilities. It means human activity just dominates everything. The air, everything is human made. So what can we learn from studying the deeper past and human activity that produces bigger things for our own age? It's a very general question. That's why I said it was unfair.
Okay. That's why when I was talking about theory, I later realized that the environment and the people and the people's choice goes together. Like the cultural choice and the environment normally goes together. So, like the environment can improvise, but it's not always possible that people will follow what the environment improvises to them. That's why I normally give this example. It is, for us in Tanzania, we call Uganda a banana republic. But thinking all of Ugandans plant banana. But you can find there are some Ugandans who are not even interested with banana or whatever. And I recently met a Ugandan who dislikes matoke, and I was wondering. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered. And now coming back to Dr. Esoruku, you asked about my positionality. You know, for us archaeologists, this question is I think it's among the most difficult questions to answer. And maybe let me try. Maybe you were talking about my specialization by using this study. And if it is like that, I will call myself a Holocene archaeologist, because now in archaeology we have we have different subdiscipline within. So there are those one who are dealing with the Paleocene archaeology, which is like Pleistocene archaeology, which is 2 million, like 2.5 million years ago, up to 12,000 years ago. But as you can see, the timing of my study actually falls within the category of Holocene time, which actually can be timed from around 10,000 years ago up to current. So for us, we are all Holocene products, because we live within that. We are still in that epoch. So I'm interested, like as my specialization, to do with the archaeology of Holocene time and not the archaeology of pre-Holocene time. And that's why even when the opponent asked about the Hendex, actually it's a stone tool which goes beyond the Holocene. Like it was made and it was invented beyond the Holocene time of archaeology, or like of Holocene epoch. So I can position myself as that.
You have smartly attempted to push away the question, but I would like to bring it back to you. What I was asking is, you knew everything before you started doing this study. And when you got the opportunity to do it, you have jumped into it without effort. And here you are with all the levels of knowledge. And is this worth it?
Okay, now I've gotten you right. And I can properly try to answer you. Yes, I had experience working in the basin, and there might be some assumption that I drew before even endeavoring myself into doing this one. And there might be some assumption that were contrary to what maybe I would get. But I positioned myself to be to the academic and scientific rigor to let now the findings to speak by themselves and not now bringing in my prejudices that I had thought, because there are some, that's why when I was presenting the findings, I didn't say, you see the whites or the other researchers skipped because it contradicted their prior thinking. But I presented the data there by respecting science, by respecting academia, and actually I let the data to speak by themselves. I don't know whether, as I've said, it is complex to address this one, but maybe it's a satisfaction. So you also talked about my conclusion about past and current environment. And in this one, I think you talked about the existing cows, like cattle rearing in the area, and how maybe they have impacted the environment. And you couldn't maybe get clear why do I say the past looks like the current environment. So as I've said, maybe to repeat, we do this kind of comparison by analyzing the micro silica remains, which are proxies that tell us what really covered the vegetation of that time, because now the scientists can establish by using, after getting those remains, which are microbotanic, they can tell that during this time in the past, this kind of vegetation covered this area. And that one can be cross referenced with the existing one. That's why instead of taking only soil sample that will tell you the past colonization of the forest, but you also collect the living plants, such that when you say there are changes, that should reflect from the phytolith nature you got from the sediments. If they are different, and then we can examine they are different because by then maybe the environment was more wetter, and then it couldn't allow the growing of this kind of vegetation, or the environment was more arid than the aridity we have currently. And actually, that's why the vegetation was of this nature, because in such kind of aridity environment, this is what it could do. It could improvise in terms of vegetation. Okay. Another thing, you asked about the use of theory and how are they integrated in the findings, and you smartly used the examples of spices. But when I was presenting, forget about the other objectives for environment, because it can directly reflect what we are saying. But direct, when I was presenting my findings for the first objectives, and I started now giving where these megaliths were located, like showing that people somehow were dictated by the existing nature of the environment. So they would look topographically areas where it's good for them to establish one. And actually that one is environment, because actually environment is all component that is entailed, including forest, mountains, water, people, and etc. So they will do settle, like the established settlement where they could easily get their resources. That's why most of these settlements were near the rivers and like near the lake, and some were positioned somehow at the foothills of the mountains to be like visibly for watching, or maybe being vigilant for their enemies, but also the thing of aesthetic value, because some of the settlement, like of the structure, were put where they are observed clearer and they could have a better view of the lake. So you can also bring in things like that, which were actually determined by the environment, like the nature of the environment. So even where they could get enough and good raw materials to build or to construct their structures, it's also a part of studying the environment, and that's what we do as a landscape archaeologist, examining what influenced them in terms of environment. However, that one does not limit the choice, especially thinking of what kind of a stone to be used, a kind and a form of a structure to be constructed, the use and the functional roles of a structure. Like this structure, we are using stones, but it will be used majorly for rituals, and this is for residential activities. This is for maybe a well or whatever. Okay, you talked about the existence of Sukuma and the Iraq ethnic groups and their aggressive behavior towards either environmental destruction. And you also said, how are these Hadza and Datoga indigenous? So regarding the experience of interacting with these people, especially the Hadza, because for them they depend more on the environment. So they complain a lot about the migration of Iraqi and Sukuma into the basin, because for these ones they do both. They do cattle rearing, like pastoralism, but also they do agriculture, and that one actually takes a lot of bush clearing. And the thing which has actually pushed the animals, especially these wild animals, off the region. And now these herds are now struggling to get their food, because like the tree that were used like to give them fruits are now rare, but also because of now high intensification of domesticated animals, animals are also running away, especially when they are you see those bells they normally hang on the cows to locate where they are, like those disturb, like the cows which are so stubborn. But those one, like those kind of noise, are not in friendly with the wild animals. So they are now struggling, and that's why you can see they have now changed their way of life, even positioning their settlement. They are now positioning themselves to where they can easily get some little money from tourists to run their life. You see? So they have started even eating things they are not used before, like ugali, which is posho from this side, and etc. So this one, actually, the intensification of like the flowing of many agro-pastoralists in the region has impacted the environment, but also has impacted the socioeconomic activities of the indigenous people. And how are these indigenous? They are indigenous because they regard the area as their homeland. So they have been interacting with the environment since time immemorial. However much they are now impacted with the modernism, and however much the government has also tried to make sure that, especially these herds are changing, but they have just maintained their socioeconomic kind of life. They built for them schools. They never sent their kids into those schools, but these schools are now being these schools are being used by these now new ethnic groups which are coming in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Albert. We congratulate you upon this milestone so far. Now, you are talking about the megalith culture or megalithic culture. Is this homogeneous? Is it monolithic? If there are diversities in these cultures, how did you accommodate them in your study? Somewhere you mentioned what they call petrographic analysis. I would like you to throw more light, on that concept. And then there's also what you called paleo-environmental data collection. Advanced engineering. Finally, I'll not talk about the religion, but I was also going to ask you the spiritual aspects. How were you able to decipher the spiritual aspects, in relation to your work? For me, it's not yet very, 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 very clear how you are able to, collaborate them. Then how do you steward your work in the context of the sustainable development goals? Okay. And when I look at your recommendations, I only see a recommendation that talks about conservation, preservation. What other recommendations can you really put forward for the maybe government and other actors, apart from further research here and there? Really, what other recommendations, tangible recommendations, can you put forward in relation to your study? And maybe before I leave the podium, on your objective number 4, you are talking about the environment and then the megalithic structures. So you are saying that the findings revealed a human environmental interaction and that they also hint at other factors. What are those other factors or possible factors? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Albert. Albert, we appreciate your work. And when I was reading it, although not from the discipline of archaeology, I was really getting great insights. Thank you so much. For instance, your allusion is to the risk assemblage and during the Neolithic age, very, very, very insightful. Then I was remembering my people where I grew in the village who are still using stones for grinding. the millet you are talking about ugari, not ugari, hey, this is finger millet. The traditional way is by using stones. So you can see how we are preserved the thick culture. So thank you so much. Up to now. Anyway, my main issue was about the integration of those theories, but it has been talked about. But let me go to page 20. Page 20. On page 20, it's about by the way, I love your photographic representation of your work. Very good. On page 20, there is a map. On page 20, there is a map. And this map, I deem it's very critical. It stewards the unit of analysis in your work. So I think this map, something much better could be done on it. You're talking about Eyasi Basin here, map of a lake, Eyasi Basin. Here we are talking about megalith structures. Mega, from I think English is a prefix, can mean big. When we talk about big topics, big things, and here we have small things. Can you do something much better about it? Because someone will be interested about Eyasi Basin. Can you make Eyasi Basin much better, please? The key evidence where you have done very well. Why can't this one be a bit mega? Then, what do you call the key? The key is largely illegible. It's illegible. You can't read anything and get it. And I think this is an important component in your work, which you maybe think about it. Then when we go to the source is Mjandwa. Is there another Mjandwa other than you? You are the Mjandwa. When I was looking at Mjandwa, I went back to the references and what I saw. I think it's an article you co-authored with someone, is it? It's an article, I think. And as if I understand, well, it's not yet published, is it? It was published, yes, okay. So I was thinking, there in Tanzania, don't you have well-established cartographic institutions, departments, ministries, where you can get a better, authentic, independent source than yours here? Because someone may say this is self-generated, Mjandwa. So Mjandwa, what do you think about that? I'm not doubting you, please. Can't you get somewhere, like a department, you locate this map there? Think about it. And maybe another issue is to deal with orthography. It's about spelling of what. These are some of that said slip of what? Slip, we said we called it slip of pen, slip of a cursor. It could be slip of a cursor here. So is the word adopted there. Can you make page 20 should be adapted, then adopted? So can you make it much better? But I would love that this map is very interesting in your work, especially considering the work we have done, photographic representation. Do something much on editing this map. I really thank you, and I thank your supervisor.
Thank you very much, panelists. Albert, I thought I should also add my very small questions so that you combine when you respond. So listening to you speak, I got curious about some things that I would like you to clarify. I know that one of the panelists asked this question early, but I'm still going to ask it. So to a lay person, how would one distinguish between early Iron Age pottery and Neolithic pottery? Are the differences like so obvious, physical? If you got two different pieces of pottery here, would you then be able to say, oh, this is Neolithic, or this is early Iron Age? I just want you to help us appreciate that, because we know that in the contemporary world, there are people who make pots anyway, and you get pot shards. And so how would you differentiate? If I got a potsherd today and it has a certain kind of design that was used by early Iron Age potters, how would you distinguish that? And then somewhere I think you talked about the similarity, and again one of the panelists highlighted the similarities in the, I think it was the environment before then, and I'm going to say before the 15th century, and the contemporary times. But I think what I'm curious about is whether you would say that the environment in this region has changed or not changed. You know, has it remained the same? I know there was a question around this in terms of the plants. If the plants have remained the same, does that tell us something about the environment? Or does it even tell us about, Dr. Suruku asked about, the birds, the animals. So sometimes you get new plants introduced in an environment by different means. And so in this particular case, what would you say about that? I was also curious, again, as a non-specialist, but as somebody who has worked with archaeologists, where I have seen them do excavations, but also do ethnographic studies or conduct interviews and all that. I know that, again, Dr. Taylor asked you about historical linguists, if any historical linguists have worked in this region. But I'm just, again, curious if you'd had any interviews at all with these communities, and if you didn't, perhaps why? And if you had, how that could have or maybe not influenced your findings. Then I also wanted to, I think, I don't know if Dr. Edgar's question was persuasively answered about, so the environment is very much at the center of influencing change here. And then the question he asked about human agency, right? And the idea that you've got also this kind of idea that idea or assumption that people can indeed be able to do things, and with the technological advancement, without necessarily being influenced by the environment. And so I think his question was then, from this, from your study, what would you say? And I'm imagining a situation, would you say that yes, it is possible to actually have it is possible to have these changes with the environment playing a very minimal role, or does the environment still remain very central in all this? And then lastly, and I think on a lighter note, I would want to hear, and this is what I'm most interested in, what you would consider the shortcomings of your study, if any, and what you think you would do better if somebody else told you, no, there was a problem with that, and now I'm giving you funding to start this PhD over again. What is that you think you would do better? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Maybe to start with, Dr. I couldn't get your name, not this one. Martin. Yeah. For the sake of proper documentation. So you asked about whether this megalith culture was homogeneous, because now it is defined as a culture because you incorporate the megalith structures and some other associated archaeological materials. That actually that one brings in a complete set of culture because megalithic are just structures. But when it is culture, then now it's a total way of people who constructed, like total ways of life, and that's why now you bring in issues of the structure themselves, but also you think of their subsistence strategy, which is socioeconomic activities, by discussing whether they were hunters, pastoralists, or whatever, and you can also talk of their religious or social motives, but to talk maybe whether these structures were homogeneous, they were heterogeneous because I recorded numbers or like different types of the structures. So we had domains, we had burial cairns, we had I also got some stone cycles differently constructed. So they were of different types. Like you also talked about, you wanted me to clarify on petrology. I didn't talk about this one in my presentation, but it was also part of my study. And talking of petrology, it is mainly to do with the analysis of mineral contents from the materials, and actually the purpose is to understand the sourcing of the raw materials. So and actually did petrology mainly for the pottery to understand whether like the pottery were locally made, and to cross-check whether these sites I studied were being settled by people of the same origin, or people who had same kind of life. Because the assumption is if they are same people, or if they, like these sites I was dealing, it is for people who settled there contemporaneously, like at the same time, then the source of clay soil to make pottery would be the same, because these people would do the exchange of goods among themselves. So the source may be the clay soil to make their pottery from the same from the same spot. And what I recovered, even that one, I think it was also clearly evidenced from the decorations which these people were putting on their pottery were almost the same, and the petrographic analysis informed me that the same, like these people used the same clay source. So definitely there might be people who were interacting together, or people of the same kingdom during that particular time. And you also wanted me to explain about the environmental data collection. I took this as one of the research methods, my method of collecting data. And for this one, I majorly zeroed on collection of of these samples to retrieve phytolith, because now the environment can be reconstructed by using different proxies. We have phytolith, which are inorganic, like plant remains, the inorganic plant remains. that conserves longer in that sediment, and they can be used to reconstruct past environment. But also, environmental scientists can use pollen, which also keeps longer in the sediments, and they can also use starch grain. And all these are micro botanical remains. But again, there are other proxies where they can use real seeds if you can be able to retrieve, and some other macro plant remains. Macro, which means bigger, with the ones you can see and you can identify, like this is from this kind of a tree. But for me, I focused on phytolith because regarding the nature of the area and the soil nature, it is documented that pollen cannot preserve better in the soil. But for phytolith, they can preserve longer, because even like regardless of how they can preserve longer in the soil for the phytolith, but there is a nature of the soil which dismantles or distracts, like it makes them decay. So they also don't preserve longer in any form, in any kind of soil chemistry. And you also talked about how did I decipher the issue of religion. This is subjective, and actually the issue of religion came in when I was thinking, because there are some people, when you read you read some other guys who have studied megalith, they are saying like the megalith were somehow used for as rituals or for astronomical reasons. So they would worship these suns, worship maybe the moon, etc. So for me, I brought in this one because you see especially the dolmen, the entrance being directed closely, like in a true west where it's a sunset, and the others being directed in a true east where it is a sunrise. Now that one bringing some sense of whether these people were sun worshippers. And that's why I brought in some things to do, although it can also be subjected the either way. And how do I situate this study on sustainable development goal, the existing one? Now, this study, in terms of its significance, first of all, it shows how environment can be used to determine some other social advancement. And therefore, it shows how environment can be respected, can be kept in intact. And therefore, I think one among the major components of the sustainable development goal is to make sure that the climate is conserved. And therefore, this study brings in that sense. But also, the issue of those ancient people to think of how they can set their settlement, that learning of the settlement, utilization of the natural occurring resources, also tells on how the current people can utilize their resources, especially their local resources, in making life. But also, it can also be used with the current town planners to see how the ancient people made better use of their knowledge they had to plan their settlement better, where they could get food resources, they could get security, they could get whichever they wanted for that time. And you also talked about you didn't see tangible recommendation, because the only recommendation you saw was only about conservation issues. But I think I recommended several things to do with, like the future scholars should think of doing some extensive study to make some more, like to do with the more relative, like radiocarbon dating, like to articulate better and getting the clear chain of changes and the cultural existence in that area. And also, I also suggested about the use of LIDAR and the GIS mapping, and actually, which is also, it can also be taken as a recommendation for future scholars who will be interested. Like now, the area is still bushy, and some of the structures are even covered by soil. But by using this kind of technology, we would reveal what is underneath, and they can even reveal what, like the other form of structures which I couldn't be able to uncover or to report. And I've also talked about the issue to do with ancient DNA, because that one will locate directly, especially when if I can, like they can be able, I might be the one or them who have been interested, like if they can be able to get human remains, and then they can cross check the ancient DNA and get to know exactly the people who settled there, because until now it is still unclear. For Dr. Katuram, I think most of them were just comments, and I'm seriously taking this not for granted, and I'm going to address whichever you have commented and you have advised. Let me go quickly with the Dr. Pamela's questions. You said, how do we distinguish between Neolithic pottery and the early Iron Age pottery? And in archaeology, there are some materials that are used to actually to tell what happened in the past. And for pottery, it can be used differently, because by using pottery, you can get to tell about the chronology of the lived people. You can also be used to tell about the social identity, like the people, because the way they used to make their vessel or the pottery, those pot was actually to simply to give them the self-identification of their culture. So they would use those decorations, the nature of the rim, even the nature of the pots, the shape, etc., to identify themselves. And that's why archaeologists have come up with several analyses, especially to do with when you want to if you're dealing with the Iron Age pottery, they have particular shapes. For instance, the rims are thick, and they have bevels, they have flutes. So, when you get it, you get to know, even when you have not dated, you directly understand. Even if they bring you a yesterday made pot, you can easily tell this is of yesterday or it's of recent. But also you talked about new plants to be introduced. What is its interpretation? Whether, I don't know whether I can answer it properly, but for me, I think there is no problem when new plants are introduced in an area. What matters, like the new plants can be introduced, but the climate is still the same. Because I remember even in our region, now that this is off my thesis, we used to have some particular plants, and then without even a change of environment, like the environment which is visibly seen that it has changed, those kind of plants disappeared. And here came in some other new plants which were not there before. But still we get rain in regard to normal seasons, and then we can cultivate our local plants like the same we used to plant. But you see, there are new introduction, and maybe it might be transitional phases. Maybe that's what they call climate change, because it's not abrupt, it is slowly. Yes. Okay, you also asked about whether I did some interviews or not. It is true. When you are doing archaeology, there is what we call public archaeology. So before you reach the site, and you start your working, you need to meet the community to do the engagement and at least briefly inquire about what they perceive what you are doing. And actually it was not majorly my one of my tool, but I did some little like to engage the community. However, the previous document that I reviewed, especially the UDism repository, I accessed some documents where they did interviews, and they interviewed the Hadza and the Toga, and actually in that interviews there are some megalith structure which we are shown to them if they can give any meaning or if they can attribute any connection with them, and that's why I reached after now accessing that one and do some analysis. I realized that these people are not anyhow connected with the culture I was dealing with. And the weakness, there is something human agents on the environment. I've answered. Okay, the weakness of my study. And if I'm given other shortcomings, is it different because English confuses weakness and shortcomings? Is it not the same word? So I think what makes what makes me uncomfortable when I read my thesis, it's the issue to do with the stratigraphic sequence, because the stratigraphic sequence limits me to discuss the issue of environment, because once you're discussing the environment, you need to actually get the very steady and clear sequence of the deposits, such that you can be able to say these deposits of this time, the environment was of this nature. Now, because of getting the sequence, the profile, which was mixed up, I cannot confidently say, you see, 2,000 years before, the environment was of this nature, while you have gotten a sample of 2,000 years at the top. So if I'm given money for further research, that's what I can focus on. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Albert. I think now we've already identified the next step in terms of where we would want to go for further research. Okay, so it is that moment when we open up for any questions, comments from the audience, both physical and online. Professor Farouk, you're in charge of online comments or questions. If any come up, please let me know. And we have 10 minutes, not 10 questions. We have 10 minutes for this. So I'll want to be like the clergy in the church to begin counting and say who has a question, who has a comment.
Thank you very much, Albert, for the very, very rewarding experience that you have shown. Throughout your presentation, I was waiting for the Swahili word for megalithic, because I know that the people around there must be calling it something else, not this one. I was also very happy to see that in the recent World Heritage sites that have been declared. One was the megalithic of the Kyazike in France, So would that also be a good recommendation? Because for the way you've explained, they really stand out as key in the historiography of the region, in the archaeology of the region. And so I would expect to see that in your recommendation. So thank you very much. That's all I had. Okay, so I want to take it that we don't have any questions and that Albert has done a very good job of educating us. So, thank you very much, Albert. And I would now like to request, I think I'm going to request that the non-panelists step out and we conclude this within here rather than have us go the other side and come back, if that is okay with everybody. But don't disappear. Don't go too far. I hope we still have some tea for Albert. Okay. Albert, you have people here to take care of you as we do the near last bit of the exercise. And okay, that's what I was waiting for.
Yes, sir. Yes, Albert, you can't be feeling cold because because of the way you're sitting. Okay. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome back everybody. Again, our audience here and online. I really want to thank you for keeping with us here through this process. And of course, I would like to thank the panelists for the commitment, for the thoroughness. And I know everybody is waiting for the smoke and nobody's interested in the detail. But but the detail is also important. Albert, you've done very well. Many congratulations. You pass with flying colors. And I would like to thank you and congratulate you. We all know well, maybe we all don't know, but I was going to say we all know what a PhD program is, but I realize no, we all don't know, and some of us are in it. We are yet to know what it is when we get to the end. But yes, you've stood firm and you've reached this point. I think that on behalf of the college, I would like to really extend my gratitude to your university for allowing you pursue this study, be very present in Makerere for all the time that you were supposed to be here without compromising. And I sincerely mean this because I know that there are many people who find themselves in a very difficult situation. You just get a scholarship, you also get a job, and the employer says you either take the job or you go for the scholarship and you miss the job. So we don't take that for granted. So having congratulated you, Albert, I want you to to have a piece of paper and pen, or a piece of pen and paper, so that you take note of some of the concerns that the panel wants you to address before the journey is complete. So we wanted you to strengthen your justification on why this study was conducted at the Lake Eyasi Basin and not anywhere else in Tanzania. So if you can strengthen the justification and try to locate it within the SDGs, that will be critically important. And that will help to align with your recommendation later, where you emphasized the importance of conservation. Secondly, we know that you integrate the theories in the analysis of the findings of some of the objectives, but we would like you to make sure that this is done throughout the objectives. In other words, in analyzing data for all the objectives, let it be clear that the theories are blended in. Do not take it for granted that people will understand that after all, in this section, you're talking about the environment, and therefore that takes care of the theory. So just make sure the theories run through clearly so that we have good soup without having too much pili-pili in one place and then some other side too much salt and somewhere else there is no taste. Okay, and then so we also ask you to pay close attention to the maps, figures, all those as they appear in the text, so that the source is accurate, but also that they can be as clear as they can possibly be. We recognize that it is not an offense for you to use the map from your previous published work, but we also think that if you got a new map, especially on page 20, the big one, a much more clearer one, that it would be more appropriate, because then it would help us appreciate what you're focusing on right now. And then some of us were a little confused by the Hadza and Hadzabe. Are they the same people? Are they different? And so, again, this reminded me of my third-year students. When I talk about Niger, they say, but that is Niger, and that is Nigeria. And then you say, okay, and what are the people? The other ones are Nigerians, and these ones are what? So, so are they all Nigerians? If it is Niger, and then they are Nigerians, and the other one is Nigerian, the people are Nigerians. What is it? What is the difference? But we want you to help. We want you to help the reader understand the difference, if there is, between the Hadza and Hadzabe. But if also they are the same, then tell us that they're the same and they are using these words interchangeably. Okay. And then there was concern that you clarify something on the hand axe, that the results from what you presented, so the results suggest or associated with the late Stone Age, and yet it is an early Iron Age material. Do I get that right? So how do you help make that clear again for your readers, so that they don't say you're tactfully confusing all of us? Then small editorial issue for the in-text citation, and this again, this concerns most of us here. When you have more than 2 authors, then you have to begin with, you have to look at the years chronologically, okay? So if you're going to have Mjandwa 2010, and then you have Hanakwa 1975, and you have Ogot 1960. Then for in-text citation, we would expect that you begin with Ogot 1960, and then you follow like that. And of course, if it is the same, also if all the readings are from Taylor, but Taylor has published in different years, you would still do the same. Or if he has even had 2 articles in 1 year, and then you'd help us clarify by indicating the A and the B. So you pay attention to this in your in-text citation, and also when you get to the references. And then the recommendations are okay, but we want you to speak to a wider audience beyond the academic audience. So you have very academic recommendations, but the panelists suggest that you think about practical recommendation as well. But of course, making sure that the recommendations are aligned to your objectives. And lastly, and I think really, really important, is please edit, and edit. Proofread your work, because once you submit, you'll not have control over it, okay? And so either people will be reading your thesis and saying it's well written, or they'll be reading a thesis and wondering how Makerere University can let such a thesis get to the public to access. So this is an ongoing process. You have up to, how much time do you want, Albert? How much time do you want? 1 week? Okay, so you have up to 2 months. So up to 2 months to carry out the corrections and submit. If you decide to take 5 months, then you'll have to resubmit and we examine you again. And during your revisions, of course, you'll work with your supervisors, but the person who will be overseeing the corrections is Dr. Edgar Taylor, a member of the panel. So that is what I can say. So congratulations once more. And this part of the exercise is done. Thank you very much, our audience. You're all looking at me. You want me to hand it? Yeah. It's of course he's free. He's welcome to say something if he wants to. He could also be overwhelmed that he doesn't want to say anything. So
Thank you, Dr. Pamela, for having saying what you have said. And I'm really glad for this event, and I would really thank God first for taking me through this journey. It has been very good for me that I came in Uganda when I was Mr. Albert, and by that time I didn't have even a job, but now I'm getting off Uganda when I'm a doctor and I'm a lecturer somewhere. Again, I would want to thank myself, like to give a hand of thanks to myself because of what I've done. Because I know you have said it is not simple, and it really it's not simple. But for the energy that I've taken in, I really congratulate myself. I would also thank my supervisors, Professor Kyazike and Professor Lejju. They have done a lot to make sure that they mentor. They do a lot, like reading those books and give comments is not normal, and it's not easy for some of the supervisors even. But for them, they have taken a lot of their time reading, give comments, but also to make sure that I go through. So without forgetting my family, my parents, especially my daddy and mom, because a long time in the past when I was still very young, my dad prophesied, like he told me, for you, I see you might even be a university lecturer, and that's what is now happening. Because he even told my elder brother that for you you'll be a soldier, and he's now a soldier. So I think if it could be possible, if he looks that he looks at this, he would be very happy. And unfortunately, he's not online. But I also want to extend this one to my wife and my kids. I know my wife is online following, although she cannot speak because she's. But I know the environment she's in, but she's really closely following what is going on here. And without forgetting also my people who have attended here, my cohort mates, the college and the department for support. As you have said, my employer, the University of Dodoma, I know there are some of my colleagues in the Department of History and Archaeology who are following. And again, without forgetting, I would want to appreciate the role made by my independent reader, plus the this one. I also appreciate the attendance of my young brother. Yeah, he welcomed me here in Uganda and giving me some orientations to how to go through the city of Kampala the way it is, like with a lot of borders and etc. But I thank him. And Thank you so much, and God bless you. I really appreciate. They are just reminding me that I forgot to thank Farouk for coordinating this session. I understand the energy you put in, because even shaping my slides this morning to look the way they are looking, I think it's because of you. I'm sorry for that. I had forgotten you. Thank you.
It's done. but there's normally that other last bit where Farouk organizes for photos. The photo session, who takes the photos with the now Dr. Mjandwa, not the candidate